We're talking today with Mr. Johnnie Myles of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Myles, can you start with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Natchez, Mississippi. And that's across the river, across the bridge from Louisiana. Actually, I was born because they didn't have no hospital in Vidalia. They had to bring me over. I was born in Charity Hospital in Natchez.
Okay, so your family then lived in Louisiana then?
Part of them, part of my family, but I mean, I went to school in Natchez.
Okay, so you went to school in Natchez. All right. Now, what did your family do for a living when you were growing up?
Well, mostly farming.
Okay. Now, did they share-crop or did they own land?
Well, I guess it was a sharecropper, yeah.
All right. And did you have both parents living at home when you were growing up?
No, well, my mother passed when I was 5 months old. And I was raised by my aunt in Adams County, which is Natchez, Mississippi. I was raised by her. See, it was 4 of us. 2 boys and 2 girls.
And were you the youngest then?
I'm the baby, yeah. I was 5 months old when my mother, she passed had complications from birth, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In fact, I never saw her.
And certainly wouldn't remember at this point if you had.
I wouldn't remember, and in fact, my sister has some pictures, but I don't have any here.
Okay. Now,
but this is the aunt that raised me. That picture right there, you can see it.
I can't see too well on here, but all right. Now, how much schooling did you get in Mississippi?
In Mississippi, I went to Catholic school until I reached. Then they would say you had to pay to go to Catholic school, and then they taken me out of Catholic school and put me in public school. And in public school, I was so much advanced because, you know, I mean, the teachers, all the nuns, well, hell, they was really sharp. And boy, when you made a mistake, they hit you on the knuckles there, you know what I mean. So the bottom line, when I say that to say this, when I went to public school at the beginning of the 8th grade, I was so far ahead of them in the public school because the nuns, you know, I mean, they teach you everything, they don't pull no punches. So actually they put me 2 grades ahead. Of course, what they were reading, hell, I had that a couple years ago.
Right. So you were way ahead, yeah. So how did your family would have had to pay to send you to the Catholic elementary school, right?
Yeah, they did. This is my aunt, the one that raised me, you know what I mean. When my mother raised me, she had to pay. And this is why, as I got to the 8th grade, it would be more expenses sending it to Catholic school.
Right. So the high school was more expensive.
Than going to the regular high school.
Right.
And which that was up on the hill there.
Okay.
But due to the education I got in the Catholic school. See, I wasn't a Catholic. But you know, you had to go through all the rituals.
Right.
I mean, all the kids had to do the same thing. But when I went up there, what they were reading, hell, I had that 2 years ago.
Right. Now,
because public school, you know what I mean.
Well, the school system was segregated, so it would be a black school. Now, was the Catholic school just for black kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably would have been.
Yeah, because we only had, well, it was mixed. See, we had white nuns for teachers.
Yes.
And so we had mixed, you know what I mean.
But the students would have been black.
Yeah, quite a few of them was black.
Okay. But there were a few white students who went there too?
It was color in there, yeah.
Okay. All right. But then, of course, when you go to the public school, that's all segregated.
Now, when you go to public school, it's all segregated.
Right.
It's all black.
Right. So Natchez would have had a white high school and a black high school.
Natchez had,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
And then after after you get to a certain grade, your tuition for the Catholic school
Right.
would go up.
Right. Right. Okay. So now then, did you graduate from the public high school? Did you finish high school?
Well, I went through the 8th grade. I guess would be the 10th grade would be the highest I went.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got credit for that. Yeah.
All right. And then, how old were you when you left school?
When I left school, I was when I volunteered to go into the service. I was 16, but I had to have consent from
Right.
my guardian, mother and father.
Right.
The ones that raised me.
Right.
And so actually I was 16, but they signed that waiver that I was supposed to be 17, but
Right.
I was only 16.
Okay. Now, so you get signed in. Okay. Now, why did you want to go into the military?
Well, I had some of my family in Louisiana had been in the military, and my guardian, her spouse, right at the time, he had been in the military. Yeah, he was in World War. And what is that, Japanese? The war. Yeah, the war before World War II.
Yeah. Well, there was World War One.
Yeah, it was. World War One. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Now, why did they think that would be a good thing? What did you expect from the Army when you went in?
Well, I wanted to be just like he was. I wanted to be in the military. I wanted to be a soldier.
Okay.
And well, otherwise, it's just it was. They were having a lot of problems, and kids was getting in trouble and different little things. And after my guardian's old man talked to her about everything and saying that I could get an education, plus I would be, and she thought about it for a long time. But she had to sign the papers because I was
Right.
still, I had to be 17 to volunteer. And then after she signed the papers and everything, then everything went right on through. See, I had passed the test and everything.
Right.
But I wasn't old enough.
Okay. So now they've signed the papers. Now this is 1946. Now you're
Yeah.
17. Now you're in.
Yeah.
Actually, you're 16. You're not yet 17. But anyway. Okay. Now you're in. Now, where did they send you for basic training?
I went to basic training. I went from there to Camp Sherwood. And from Camp Sherwood, they sent me to Fort Sam.
Okay.
Fort Sam. That was because it was Camp Bullets.
All right.
Camp Bullets in Fort Sam.
Fort Sam, Houston.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they had the little huts, I think it was 4 of us used to sleep in the huts there, and in the different outfits. Yeah, I take my basic training there.
Okay. Now, what did the basic training consist of? What did they make you do?
Well, the basic training consists of, since I was the branch of service I had picked was the medical corps. So they sent me to school for, for medical aid man, different things.
Right. Now, before you learned about the medical aid man's job, though, did you get sort of the usual basic training, the marching and the weapons?
Yeah, the marching. I had to go through the full scope of that, marching and Sand Hill and everything.
All right. Now, when you were doing your training, Were all the other recruits with you? Were you all black, or did they?
Yes, at that time that we had this, we hadn't integrated everything.
Right.
Because when they integrated, I was attached. I went from the 25th Combat Team, which was all black.
Mm-hmm.
I was attached to the 15th Infantry up on the post, which was mixed.
Mm-hmm.
This was when they started, you know what I mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're going to right there as that stuff starts to happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but when you go into basic training, it's still segregated. Now,
It was all black, yeah.
Okay, now were your drill sergeants, were they black or were they white?
Everyone was black, yeah.
Okay, so your sergeants were black too?
Yeah.
Okay, now were the company officers white? And the actual commanders?
Well, the high echelon was, you know what I mean, but it was a mixture, black and white.
Okay. But were there some black officers there, lieutenants or captains?
Yes.
Okay, because you had a fair number of those out of World War II in the end. Okay. Now, at this point, World War II is over. The Army is getting a little smaller.
Yeah, it was over then. World War II was over.
Okay. Now, when you first got out to Fort Sam Houston, were there some guys there maybe who had been in World War II who were waiting to be discharged?
Process and everything, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Okay. But you were one of the new guys. So.
I was one of the new kids on the block.
Okay. Now, but you were at Fort Sam Houston, though, when the president gives his order to desegregate the military.
Right.
Okay. Now, do you remember how you learned about that or found out that that was going on?
About what?
Well, finding out that they were going to desegregate.
Well, they had us all together, and some of us was distributed to different outfits. However, I was one of the ones that was selected out of the groups to go into the segregation part, which was, they were breaking up the 25th Combat Team. And so they assigned me to the 15th Infantry. Now this was mixed.
Right. Okay. Now, what was it like going into a mixed unit like that? What kind
Well,
of
it was quite
reception
an adjustment. You know what I mean? You got colored and white and everything, and I mean, hey, it was a little touching once and going, especially when you go to the latrine or something and everything. You know what I mean? But we all got together and just united as one. But we still had that little touch and go there. Otherwise you know it's your place.
So what was your strategy for dealing with that? How did you conduct yourself, or how did you decide
Well,
what to react to?
so that's like we'll go out in town or something. The blacks would be together and the whites would be together in their different areas. You know what I mean?
Right.
We had areas that we be in, and you know what I'm talking about. And it's areas that we would be in, hey, we probably would never see no more of them until we come back on the post.
Right. Now, on the post itself, did the officers or the people running the camp, did they try to do things to help make sure everybody worked together?
Yes.
What could they do to help with that?
Well, I mean, we would sit down, we eat together. We, like I said, I got my bunk in, maybe, there was double stack, I said maybe the next 3 or 2 or 1 is white.
Right.
So this is the way we had to,
Now, were you, at this point, you joined the 15th Infantry, were you assigned to a combat unit, or were you part of a medical company that was separate?
I was still the medical, I was still carrying the same thing, the medical aid.
Okay. Now, what kind of training did you get as a medical aid?
As a medical aid, I mean, learn how to put bandages and different things, what I mean.
Did they teach you how to recognize different kinds of wounds or injury or that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so, was the idea that you would be working in a field hospital, or that you would be out there with a combat unit in the field?
We would be in the field hospital, what was
or an aid station?
Fort
or-
Sam,
Mhm.
Fort Sam, Houston.
Right.
That was the basic hospital,
Mhm.
but the field hospital would be out there in the field.
Right.
And we had our little first aid kits and our little helmets we had with it, and they would distinguish us from.
Mhm.
We had a cross,
Mm-hmm.
a red cross was imprinted in our, in our steel helmet
Right.
and things.
Okay. Now, now
But
how-
we didn't. But one thing, we didn't have any guns.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how long did you stay at Fort Sam Houston?
I stayed at Fort Sam Houston. The first time I stayed there, do my basic, and then, after they broke up the 25th, this is when we was attached to the 15th. It was
Right.
integrating then,
Right. You joined the 15th. And then how long do you think you stayed with the 15th?
I stayed with the 15th there for quite a while.
Okay. So were you there long enough to make friends with some of the other personnel? Things like that? Okay. And where were they from, or what kind of backgrounds did they have?
Different things, yeah.
Were they from all around the country, or mostly
Well,
out
from
the
all
south?
over,
Okay.
yeah.
So did you get to know people from up north, from Illinois or Michigan
Yes,
or New
I
York?
met quite a few that was, transferred down there to the company from different places.
Okay. Now, was there any difference between how the people from the north behaved, whether they were white or black, and the ones from the south?
Oh, definitely, because the North had been exposed and had, even to schools and things they had up north. Hell, before we got it down there, hey, and otherwise it was just like two brothers, you know what I mean?
Right. So,
However, it was places that when they went out in town,
yeah.
especially, now I can remember this, I think I was going on a furlough for a week or something, and the whites would go in the restaurant, and we used to have to go around on the side of the restaurant, and they had this it's like this,
Yeah.
and they would pass our food out, and we would have to eat our food out.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Uh-huh.
Okay. But since you were from Mississippi, Louisiana, you were used to that.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Hey, it was the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, eventually, you transfer out. You leave Fort Sam Houston, and you go to Virginia, to Fort
Yeah.
Belvoir. All right. Now, did you get assigned to a new unit at that point?
Yes.
And what unit did you join?
Well, I was attached to the 90, what was the 90 place? The 92nd? It's a trucking division.
Okay.
Yeah. I was attached to that for a while, yeah.
Okay. But were you still medical personnel for
I
them?
was still carried the same MOS,
Right.
medical.
Okay. So now that's in Fort Belvoir, Virginia. That's where you were based.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
I was right out from Richmond,
right. Okay. Now, was that a different experience from being at Fort Sam Houston? Was it a different kind of place to work?
Yes, it was.
Okay. How was it different?
It was different in this sense, it's because we had the total mixture of black and white. You know what I mean?
So on the base, pretty much anybody might do anything or have different jobs and be in the
Right.
same units.
Right.
Okay. Okay. But the town itself, Richmond itself was still segregated. That's still
Well,
Virginia.
yes, it was really because it was places I could go, you know, I mean, through the main entrance.
Right.
I wasn't allowed into the main entrance. I just, like I told you, you know, the opening, I could eat my
Right.
food and everything would be different, but we'd be eating the same food.
All right. Now, what kind of duties did you have when you were based there at Fort Belvoir? What was your daily job?
My daily job, well, I was medical technician. Yeah.
So was there a clinic or a base hospital that you worked on?
Well, I used to work at the base hospital, and when we went on the field, I mean, you know, I mean, I had my little, I was still in the medics, you know what I mean?
Okay.
I mean, the only difference between me and them was I didn't have a gun. Of course, going through basic, I was learning how to break M1 down and do and put it back together and everything. But after basic, I mean, I just had my little first aid pouch. And I mean, I had my steel helmet on with the little red cross over it. Yeah.
All right. Now, I don't know. Did you mostly just treat people who got sick or got hurt in training, or did you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you know, I mean, you give them first aid treatment, and they're transferred to.
Right.
You know, if it's something that of serious nature, you got to be transferred to the hospital. Then the ambulance would take them to the designated hospital.
Yeah. Of course, this is also during peacetime, so
Right.
you wouldn't have battle casualties to worry about.
No. But you know, I mean, out there on the field, you know, you may get snake bite or may cut your feet or whatever. You know, what I mean, you know, I mean, and this is why I came in.
All right. Now you said you came there. You joined a truck unit, a transport unit. Did you stay with them at Fort Belvoir, or did you go to another unit?
Well, I was in the trucking now, and at Sand Hill, I mean, I was just strictly, you know, did medical stuff.
Yeah. But when you were in Virginia, you were with the
right.
same unit there the whole time. Okay. Now, did you get to go into Washington?
Yeah, I used to go to Washington all the time because we went from Fort Belvoir, Virginia to Alexander, then we going into Washington. In fact, used to take our pass. I mean, we wasn't restricted from going into Washington.
Right.
But I mean, when we got into Washington, I mean, Washington, when we got into D.C., see, D.C. was, hell, that was worse than Mississippi. You know what I mean? You had your spots there, and this was it. You know what I mean? You know, and the whites, I mean, they're on the high rise, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But when we got back on the post, hey, it was all one.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, did that seem kind of strange to you?
Well, at the particular time, no, because as I was raised in the South, and as being raised in the South, it was something that I was elevated up more by being in the military than I was in the South, because you had yes and no and everything, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But there, I mean, it was this yes and no.
But this business where you have to go back and forth between being in the old system and being in the new one, you know, on the same day or one day to the next, that, I don't know, was that ever frustrating for you, or things?
No, not really, because now if I had have been from the North, it would have been frustrated because, you know, the North was different from the South. The South is all blacks stayed together and all whites. You know, I mean, they got their own designated spots.
Right. Okay. Now, you signed up, was that for 3 years that you enlisted originally?
Well, originally for 3 years, yeah.
And when that...
Then, and in 49, when it came up, this is when the World War II was ending, and I think they were having this, the Japanese or the Korean War.
Well, in 1949, that's right in between.
That was right in between, yeah. So I had all the eligibilities on both sides because, like I said, I went to school for 18 months.
Okay.
I mean, they had brick masons, everything, vocational school.
Okay.
I mean, you have so many X number hours in the classroom, and then you have X many hours working out there on the floor.
Right. But basically, by being in the Army Air Force is there for 3 years, the Air Force ultimately by the time you're coming out of it, were you in actually the Army? I guess you were in the Army at that point.
I was in the Army. I went in the Army.
Yeah. Okay. So you're with the Army. Being in the Army for 3 years, that made you eligible for money to pay for schooling now? So you'd be able to get out?
Well, as a veteran.
Yes.
Regardless of what I was in.
Right.
I mean, we all had the same, you know what I mean?
Right. But basically,
vocational training, yeah.
But by completing your 3 years, you can come out from that and then go to school. So
yeah. When I got my honorable discharge.
Right.
I mean, this is when I take the vocational part.
Now, where did you go to school?
I went to school in Mississippi.
Okay.
Because I went to Mississippi, and I taken up shoe repair.
Okay. All right.
18 months, and I get X number of dollars, you know what I mean, every month,
Okay. All right. And now, at this point, were you still single or were you married?
No, I wasn't married.
Okay. All right. So basically, now you're going to school. Now, what town in Mississippi were you?
Natchez.
Oh, you're back in Natchez. All
Yeah.
right. Now, did you go back and live with your aunt and uncle again, or did you go somewhere
Well, I
else?
was staying with them, but I was getting up going to school.
Right.
And for the X number of hours, I think it was 5 hours a day.
Okay. And then, were you able to save some money because you had a place to stay, or did you give some money to help them?
Well, I used to contribute on food and everything I give,
Right.
and whatever they would take, I mean, otherwise they just wanted me to, I had clothes, or personal stuff I had to buy, and hey, I mean, they was real flexible then.
Right. Okay. So that was a pretty good deal then.
That was a darn good deal.
Okay. So then you complete the training course. Then were you able to get a job as a shoe repairman, or what did you do next?
After I complete the course, I came back. I got a job in a regular cobbler shop in Natchez. You know what I mean? Actually, as I was this one of his understudies, you know what I mean?
So you're making shoes and fixing shoes?
Well, not really making shoes, but repairing shoes, yeah.
Okay, so you get a job. And then how long did you stay with that job?
I stayed with that job there for 18 months after I had finished it.
All right.
And then after I had finished it, then in '52 I reenlisted back into the service again.
Okay.
This is on discharge 2. I reenlisted back in the service again.
Okay. Now, why did you do that?
Because I didn't like. I wanted to see something, you know what I mean? I wanted to. Didn't want to be exposed to the regular crowd, the Mississippi crowd.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'd been away from home for a while. You'd seen some other places, and now you kind of want to go back and do that again.
Right.
All right. So you go in, you reenlist. That's during the Korean War still, so probably they're happy to have you come back?
Yeah.
All right. And when you reenlisted then, where did they send you?
When I reenlisted, they sent me to
Was this Arkansas
Hot
now?
Spring, Arkansas, yeah.
Okay.
At Army Navy Hospital.
All right. Now, what kind of work were you doing there?
I was in the hospital. And I mean, actually, it was the kind of work that I was doing. I was in charge of the message center, you know what I mean, the little pigeonhole, they come and pick their meal up and different things. And, yeah.
And what rank were you at this point?
Rank?
Yeah. Were you,
Well,
were you a PFC?
they had started this technical rank. rank, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So actually it's a, you know what I mean, what used to be a staff sergeant.
Right.
I mean, you know, you had that T and then some of them did and some didn't, you know what I mean? And, but as working on the administrative part of it, I mean, you know, I was it's like a tech, you know what I mean?
All right. So you're basically a sergeant rank now.
Yeah. So I was a sergeant with a rocker down,
Right.
but I only different between the regular staff sergeant. I had the T in the middle
So you're a tech sergeant.
of the bottom rocker. Yeah.
Right.
I had 3 up and 2 down. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So at that rank now, at this point, I mean, was the pay better than it was when you
The
were
pay
working?
was no different in the pay. No different in the pay.
Okay. But was it better than what you were making in the shoe shop? Did you make any
Before
more?
I reenlisted, oh,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, you know, I mean, the military, I mean, you know, I knew what's coming every month.
That's true. All right. Now, what kind of living quarters did you have when you were in Arkansas?
In Arkansas,
Yeah.
well, this is after I had gotten married. And
Okay.
I had gotten married, and we had our quarters.
So they had quarters for married personnel or married
They had,
non-coms?
yeah, and then they had, you know, I mean, and even had just like PXs and different stuff, you know, I mean, you could buy stuff cheaper on the post
Right.
than you can buy it out in town.
And you get to shop out of the same PX as everybody else does, too.
Right,
It wasn't
right.
like there were separate stores or anything else like that either. All right. Now, this is during the later part of the Korean War. Did the hospital treat people who had been combat casualties and come back to recover?
Definitely, yeah.
All right. So, and did you have a
Well,
lot of...
they treated all military.
Right.
Yeah. Whatever branch, you know what I mean.
Right, but there would be people maybe who had been badly hurt and had to have a long time to recover, and so they come to
would
Hot
have
Springs. Yeah.
different wards that they would be in, and you know what I mean.
All right.
And some we would, if they had to be transferred to another hospital, they would be, you know, patched up and do everything. Otherwise, that they had more up-to-date equipment and stuff to do, and specialists in those various fields. You know what I mean?
Okay.
There, well, we wouldn't have it in our local rank.
Right. Now, at sergeant's rank, did you have men who were working for you?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
But how many guys were you in charge of?
Well, I mean, from the administrative part of it, never over 5.
Okay.
4 or 5.
All right. Now, and were those all black soldiers, or was
Well,
some of them
no,
white?
no.
Okay.
It was all integrated then.
All right.
In 52.
Now, by this time, was the integration becoming more normal and accepted?
It was trying. But in the southern states, I mean, you know, I mean, you had to walk the line. You know what I'm talking about.
Okay. So now, you mentioned you were in charge of the message center. Did you just kind of work at a desk and put up messages, or?
I had little pigeonholes and everything for different departments and different officers and things. You know what I mean? And non-commissioned officers and hey, you know what I mean? Each one had their own little. It's like a post office.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. But did you have any other duties or responsibilities besides that?
No.
And so the men who worked for you were those guys who did the same kind of work if you
They
weren't
did
there?
the same thing I did.
Did you have guys who ran messages and took them around to places? Or?
Oh, yes. Well, it's like a mailman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He have his little pouch on, he'll go to different, captain or lieutenant or sergeant, so and so, and, you know what I mean?
Right.
Drop it off there.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned before we started the interview that you had sort of 3 separate discharges. You mentioned before that you had 3 separate discharges at different times. So you left in 49. You come back.
From 46 to 49,
Yeah,
from 52 to 58.
Okay, but then once you leave,
Now that one from 58, that was 2 and 1.
Okay,
2 discharges.
so you did stay. So you re-enlisted once.
But no, I never had no overseas duty. Everything was stateside.
Right. But basically 52 to 58, so you had signed back in maybe for 3 years and then you re-enlisted right away?
Right, right. Well, you know, I mean, I had a period there because, I mean, in '52, I mean, after I got married and everything,
Right.
you know, I mean, I had clause in there that I could only stay out X number of days because of my dependents, you know.
Right. Okay. So basically then you're in Arkansas there for 6 years and you stay at the same hospital all that time?
In Arkansas?
When you go back in 52, do you stay in Arkansas the whole 6 years?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was processed from when I was discharged from the service. Totally, from everything.
Okay. Now, why did you leave the service?
Well, I mean, as I left the service with the intentions I was going to reenlist. But at that time, I had 4 dependents.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because I had gotten married and everything, you know what I mean? And then, well, yeah, I had got married. And this is why, I mean, I think I was about 2 or 3 days that I, you know, I mean, I couldn't lose my eligibility to you know, I mean, to reenlist on with the dependents I had.
So they didn't want you if you had too many dependents?
Well, the armies definitely had that, you know what I mean, you only was allowed so many dependents.
Oh,
Right.
so you couldn't have too many kids?
No, I mean, well, dependents, yeah.
Well, you have your wife and the kids
Yeah, right.
and so forth. Yeah.
Wife and spouses, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So basically it's not quite as good a fit as it used to be. So you decide, okay, once you decide then to leave the service, that's now 1958, what did you do after you got out?
After I got out, well, I mean, you know, this is when I moved to Grand Rapids.
Okay.
I moved to Grand Rapids.
And why did you do that?
Well, because my spouse, father, lived in Grand Rapids and he was a service technician for Franklin View. You know, that was, you know why they had them stokers and all that stuff then. And he was one of the service guys for that.
Okay, so he had a good...
So actually, as she wanted to be close to her father, and hey, I'm putting this friends to free, you know. I mean, I want to be close to her and my kids.
Sure.
So naturally, you know, I mean, you know, we all came as one big package.
Yeah. And then were you able to find a job up here?
Definitely.
Did you go to work where he did or someplace else?
Well, I own 2 shoe shops.
Okay.
Repair shops, yeah. Because that's the trade I'd taken in Mississippi.
Okay. And then, so did you have some money saved that you could use to get yourself set up, or?
Well, no, I mean, I didn't have to have that because I was eligible from on the GI
Okay.
benefits, you know what I mean.
So they could give you like a small business loan or something?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And as being a military man,
Right.
I would get it before you would get it. You know what I'm talking about. Now, I'm just using that as a figure of speech.
Sure.
Because it's, you know what I mean, you know, I'm a veteran.
Sure. Yeah. So you're eligible for veterans benefits.
I'm eligible for all the benefits.
Right. And this time the VA does its job right and they give you what they're supposed to. So you get some help to get started up. Now, did you buy a home too, or?
I never bought a home.
Okay. But you had your business. Yeah. All right.
But I did buy a shop and had incoming from. I bought a shop with a couple of apartments in it, and I had income coming from that, you know.
Okay.
But as through the GI Bill, I mean, hey, it was.
All right. And basically, then was that your career then? Was to run those shops and do that kind of work? Or?
Well, that was what I was doing. Yeah.
Okay.
It's running the shop. Nothing. No other job but the shop.
All right. So how long did you do that?
I did that for over 30 years.
And then,
In fact, I used to have a shop, well, right here, and well, this was before they changed around. I mean, before they had a fifth to it. This was all Old Kent.
Old Kent Bank.
Bank,
Yeah.
and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And because it used to be Old Kent right on the corner from where I was. In fact, this was at Wealthy and Easton.
Okay.
And the second building down was the shop.
Yeah, I think they're.
Yeah, that was Johnnie Shoe Repair.
Okay.
Yeah. I stayed there for 30-something years.
All right.
And then, after I got in there, then the owner of that place, he died, and then the family gave me first preference that I want to stay there and I
Right.
could buy the building.
Right. Okay. All right. And then how many kids did you have?
Well, I had 4 girls and a boy. Well, my son was a man then, because he was in the Marine Corps. He was stationed at Quantico, yeah, in Richmond. And I had 5 dependents.
Okay. And was your son the oldest?
My son is the oldest, yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, if you look back at the time that you spent in the Army, what effect do you think that had on you?
Oh, quite a lot of it. Educational wise, you know what I mean. I got a trade out of it, and hey, and I could be self-sufficient, you know. I could be my own man.
Yeah. Okay. And when you think back about the time, are there kind of individual events or things that happened to you when you were in the service that kind of come back to you or stand out?
Oh,
in your
well,
memory?
definitely. You know, I mean, with 9 years of military, I mean, you know, it's some things that you never forget.
Yeah. And can you tell me about a couple of those? Can you tell me some of those stories?
Well, I mean, you know, it's places I've been and different things I was exposed to that. Oh, well, I'll say a good example. I mean, I can remember when they used to have, as a military, you'd be out in town and they had their little pro station. You have to pick up on your little girl there on the street or something, you know what I mean? You could always go to pro stations. They had individual pro stations that you could go in and wash you up and clean you up and then give you a medication to keep down venereal disease, you know what I mean?
So they looked after you.
Yeah.
All right. Are there particular people who kind of stand out in your memory, or somebody you worked with or served under or whatever?
Oh, definitely. Well, it's quite a few that I can remember. In fact, since I've been here and been out and everything, I mean, I've came in contact with a lot of people that we was in the service together. You know what I'm talking about. You know, I mean, and you know they relocated, or they know where I'm at, and we could stay communicate, you know, through phone or writing.
Right.
Sending cards and stuff, yeah.
Okay. So you made some longtime friends then?
Yeah, oh, definitely, yeah.
Okay. Right. All right.
In fact, I can remember that when I was stationed down at Fort Benning, this guy now, he's retired. He was with that what's the name of that? Saw right up in the paper about him. You know, the first black aviation they had, you know.
Okay, the Tuskegee Airmen?
Yeah, in Tuskegee.
Yeah.
It's one guy, this Myles, you know what I mean. And while he spelled it M-I, and mine is M-Y, it's spelled. But him and Kathy, you know what I mean, hey, boy, we was the best friends, right in Grand Rapids. And now, you know what I mean, they got that little little thing that works through the VA and everything. They got their own little secretary and everything. And sometimes they have meetings back in our lounge and in our lunchroom, you know what I mean? Of course, now, I didn't get really attached with them as much as I did because this came through the American Legion, you know what I mean?
Okay. Now, you mentioned just now being at Fort Benning, Georgia.
Yeah.
So when were you there?
Fort Benning?
Yeah.
That was when I left Fort Benning and we started integrating into, otherwise they broke up Fort Benning the 25th and 24th. There was two black outfits.
Yeah.
Okay, they broke that up and they assigned us to the 15th, which
Okay.
was white and black.
Right. And was the 15th at Fort Benning?
It was at Fort
Okay.
Benning.
Because I guess when we were talking before, it sounded
Yeah.
like everything was at Sam Houston.
Yeah. But no. That was at Fort Benning.
Okay.
Now we had this like sand hill. I mean, on the outskirts.
Okay.
What the 24th to 25th was, but up on the main base
All right. Yeah.
was the 15th.
Right. Okay.
And
So
the
Sam Hill-
15th was all white.
All right. Okay. So
But then
So we're just trying to put the pieces of the story together to make sure that anybody following this has them in the right order. So you train at Sam Houston,
yeah.
and you're there for a while, but then they assign you originally to the 25th over at Fort Benning
In Georgia.
in Georgia.
Columbus, Georgia.
Right, but then they break that up, and then you go to the 15th, which is also at Fort Benning.
Right.
Okay, and in a different part of Fort Benning.
Right.
So initially, when now, did the barracks get better? Did the 15th have better barracks?
It was much better on the main post
Yeah.
because we was just like in little huts. You know what I mean? It'd be 4, 6 of us in one hut. You know what I mean? We had,
And a regular army.
but this was all brick buildings and everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Hey,
Yeah.
the 15th up there.
Right, because it's no longer segregated facilities, and so the separate but equal
Yeah.
doesn't apply anymore. Yeah. Okay. That
Well,
makes sense.
this was the birth of it. You know what I mean?
Yes, it was.
I guess, in a sense, they wanted to see how it would work out.
Right.
To put the white and the blacks together. Otherwise, instead of being 2, you'd be 1.
Well, it made sense in terms of just efficiency.
Yeah, it does. But you know what I mean, have your pros and cons, you like it, dislike it, I go in the crapper, then sit on the thing, come in there, you got to dish it down, cause, I don't want to sit behind the black, I don't want to sit behind the white. This is the way it was,
It was.
I mean, until after we got together and then just started mending and you know what I mean, otherwise instead of 2, it's just 1.
Yep. Yeah, you get to know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that changes. Yeah. So you really were right in the middle of what winds up being kind of an important part of American history.
Right.
Because the military desegregates before
Right.
the rest of society
Right.
does. Yeah.
Smoking, does smoke bother you?
Not particularly. But
No, I don't really want, this is good.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't
we're
need
just
to
about
smoke.
done here.
I don't need to smoke.
Okay. Now,
Would you like something to drink?
Oh, no. I want to close out the interview here first,
Okay.
if we can. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your story here before we close out the interview? Or do you think
No, well, like what?
Well, basically whatever memories you got about.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I will add this. I was a military brat going in at my age. And in the midst of being a military brat, it's things that I learned in the military on assignment and stuff. I can put stuff in that cupboard right there now. And I've learned to just go by the clock. 6, 9, 4, and 12. You know what I mean? And I mean, I can put something on the shelf, and I don't have to have a light on. Everything's got an assigned place.
Mm-hmm.
Even the glasses and then walking and it's pick it up. Hey, that's it.
Do you think being so young when you started, do you think that made it easier for you to adjust or harder?
Well, that's why I say, as being a military brat, the Army raised me.
Mm-hmm.
The military raised me. So actually, is a lot of the things that they do out here.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I mean, I was raised entirely different.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, it makes for a good story. So I'd just like to thank you for taking the time to tell us about it.
Well, the bottom line is this is good though. You know, what I mean, you know, that can be passed on, and too, it can be encouragement, and maybe it can be a plus for some
Mm-hmm.
youth, and as well as old, they can reminisce, and they have experienced the same thing I have.
Right.
And they say, hey, boy, this guy, yeah, he's got all the ball.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things I've forgotten,
Sure.
but him and I can get together and start to talking, and boy, stuff just come back like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
All right. Okay.
I hope this interview was rewarding. You
Yes,
know.
sir.
And
Definitely
like I
was.
said, and I hope can help somebody.
People will enjoy it. All right.
I mean, maybe in the midst of having